In January 1995, a man robbed two Pittsburgh banks in broad daylight, wearing no mask and no disguise. The security cameras caught his face perfectly. When police arrested him, he was genuinely baffled. He had rubbed lemon juice on his skin, convinced it would make him invisible to cameras. His words on arrest were, "But I wore the juice." Why would anyone believe that? And here's the stranger question. Why does almost everyone, in some corner of their life, do a milder version of exactly the same thing? A Cornell psychologist named David Dunning read that story and wondered whether the man had a second problem hiding underneath the first. If you're too incompetent to do something well, are you also too incompetent to notice? Surely not. Surely failure gives you feedback. A blank photo, police at your door. Surely someone who bombs a test can at least tell it went badly. Yet in one of Dunning's own experiments, students who scored in the bottom 12th percentile on a logic test believed they were in the 68th. Dunning and his graduate student Justin Kruger published their answer in December 1999. They tested Cornell undergraduates on humor, grammar, and logic, then asked each student to guess how well they'd done. On one 10-question logic test, the bottom quarter averaged a third of one correct answer. They estimated 5.5. Their explanation was elegant and slightly cruel. The skills you need to produce a right answer are the very same skills you need to recognize one. So if you lack them, you lose twice. You get it wrong, and you lose the ability to see that you got it wrong. Incompetence hides itself. The work won an Ig Nobel Prize in 2000, and it kept spreading from there. But something else was in the data, and almost nobody talks about it. The top quarter were wrong too, in the opposite direction. The best students consistently guessed they'd ranked lower than they actually had. Why would the most skilled people in the room underrate themselves? Hold that thought, because the answer isn't what you'll expect. First, though, the version you've probably seen. A graph. Confidence rockets to a peak at almost zero knowledge, labeled Mount Stupid, then crashes into a valley of despair, then slowly climbs back up. That curve appears nowhere in the 1999 paper, not in any form. The real figures are 4 dots, one per quarter of the class, and the line through them rises gently and never dips. The Mount Stupid label comes from a webcomic. Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal, December 2011. Plotting willingness to opine against actual knowledge. The comic never mentions Dunning or Kruger. Somewhere online, the joke and the study fused, and the fusion became the thing everyone quotes. Which brings me to a small bet. I don't think you can name a system stranger than a scientific finding that's famous mostly for what it doesn't say. Prove me wrong in the comments. That's where the next episode comes from. And if this one has quietly made you recheck something you were sure about, the like button is your honest self-assessment. Subscribe if you want the hidden logic behind everyday absurdities, because the biggest reversal in this story is still ahead. Here it is. Everyone uses the effect to mean that the least skilled are the most confident. The data says the opposite. In every one of the 4 studies, the top performers rated themselves higher than the bottom performers did. The unskilled were not the most certain. They were the most wrong. And the experts weren't underrating themselves out of humility either. Dunning and Kruger tested that. They showed top students 5 other people's tests. Within minutes, those students revised their own rank upward, close to the truth. They had simply assumed everyone else found it easy too. An error about other people, not about themselves. Bottom students shown the same 5 tests didn't budge at all. Then came the fix. 10 minutes of logic training, and the low performers suddenly got much better at spotting their own wrong answers. Make people competent, and they become accurate about themselves. The paper even carried a footnote saying nothing here implied these students were incompetent at anything else. They were, after all, Cornell undergraduates. The story hasn't ended. Some researchers have shown that feeding random numbers into the same style of chart reproduces the classic picture, and reanalyses with fairer statistics find an effect that is real but far smaller than the legend. Something survives the corrections. Nothing like the version on the graph. Dunning himself keeps insisting it isn't about general stupidity. It's about each and every one of us, sooner or later. So the next time someone invokes the Dunning-Kruger effect to describe a confident fool, notice the irony. They may be wearing a little lemon juice of their own,